So it's a Wednesday, and as usual, on a Wednesday, we have our legal beagle, Dave Dewar, who's sitting somewhere in Cape Town in a coffee shop. Um, and thus, I have to speak quite loud so that he can hear what we're saying. Um, Dave, by the way, is based down in Cape Town, and he has offices, though, all over the country. So if you ever need legal advice, he is the man. You know, if you're going to pay someone money, pay someone that gives in to you for free. Good morning, Dave. Is it still morning? No, it's afternoon. Good afternoon, David. How are you?
Warren, I'm very well, thanks, and you.
Jolly, jolly good. Jolly good.
I've got for a service today, so working out of a coffee shop. So we've got I'm hoping you can hear some lovely background music.
I can't actually, so it's not really a problem. Speaking of coffee.
Well, it would be good for the viewers to be entertained with a bit of background music. Never hurts. We all love music.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, Dave, today we're going to delve into a little subject, which is more common than people actually think. And that's, I shack up with Candace, good old Candy, and we move in together. Okay. Then we pay rent for a little while, and then we decide, hold on, guys, marriage and that's just not for us, but we want to buy. So we buy it together. What are the pitfalls of that? What can you teach the viewers about? Because it's very modern not to get married, but what can you teach our viewers?
Yeah, well, Warren, you've got to look at that asset or that house as an asset. You've got to look at it in that context. You've got to look at it as an investment, and you've got to look at it as being a business investment. So you're now partners in a property, you're partners in a business. So that property is $1 million, $1.5 million, 2 million, 2.5 million rands worth of value. So if you went into a business with someone and you both invested, call it $500,000 rand, you'd put together a proper partnership agreement. And so I'm going to advocate exactly the same approach when it comes to a property, because it is a big investment and it needs to be dealt with properly. So let me give you an example of a case that I've dealt with a couple of years ago. Father and son moved from Gauteng down to the Western Cape, and father turns around to the son and says, give up your corporate job, come work with me on the property down here. We'll develop it, make lots of money, and then I'll leave it to you in my will when I die, and off you go. Great.
All sounds good.
So then that all goes along swimmingly, and they develop the property. There are a few bumps along the way, but I'm not going to go into detail because that distracts from the point. And father then gets remarried, which is fine, no problem there. And then they redo the will. Now the will leaves everything to the mother and not to the son. And then the son
gets you mean a stepmother?
Say again?
So the will leaves it to the new wifey?
Yes, the stepmother, yeah, the new wife. Oops. So the son is now sitting there going, but I've devoted my life to this property and I've got nothing for it. So you can imagine, problem. So unfortunately, it's difficult as well. I wouldn't really say fortunately, but what happened then was that the father passed away. And his wife, as one often sees, she died of a broken heart, and within 6 months she also died. So she clearly.
And then he got the property anyway.
And then when she passed, the property then went to the son anyway, so it worked out. However, it's quite possible that she stayed in that property, sold it off, kept the money, used the money, moved into a retirement village, moved back to Gauteng, spent her time with her kids.
To her own kids,
all the money, and then there's nothing that happened. So in that instance, a partnership agreement would have been wise. I've got one at the moment that I'm dealing with where they have actually got a partnership agreement.
Ah,
And the
okay.
sort of
Now,
things that you
what
want.
is that?
Beg your
How do
pardon?
we do that? How do we
Well,
do the partnership agreement? Is it just a piece of paper, or would you advise that one sees a
yeah, well, the
conveyancing
sort of
attorney?
things that people need to put into that. Okay. First one, on what portions do we own the property? Is it 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, 90-10?
Cool.
Because obviously there are natural consequences that flow from it. Because if you own 90% of the property, you're paying 90% of the bond. Um,
And that was going to be my next question to you is what happens if we own the property 50-50, but Candy buys all the groceries and pays lights and water and I pay the bond?
well, then you've got a 50-50 on the property. So if the property gets sold, if you don't have an agreement, it's 50-50 on the property. But you
Okay.
see, but in the other example that I was giving you, the 90-10, how there it becomes very important because can you only use 10% of the house, or can you use 100% of the house if you're only a 10% owner? So you've got to work out what the provisions of that partnership are going to be. Is it, as I say, is it 50-50? The ownership can be 50-50, but we share the costs of living together 60-40 because one partner earns 60% and the other
Earns
one
more
earns.
than the other. Yeah, yeah.
And is it a full universal partnership, or is the partnership limited to just the property? Which also is quite important. I see I've lost my video. I
Yes,
don't
I
know
was
why
going to
it's done.
ask you to put your video back on and explain that.
Yeah.
So you said something about universal something.
Yeah. So, you also got to consider what happens with the maintenance of the property. Do the parties contribute 50-50? Do they contribute 60-40? Does it matter if, let's say, the one party is a builder? So he will do all the maintenance, but then what? Does the other party buy all the parts?
I've actually got it, but they
How are
married.
you going to?
But
How are you,
Henry's a Bob the Builder. Yeah, yeah.
and the most important thing for any negotiation is whatever you arrive at has to be something that is sustainable where both parties are happy. Because if both parties are not happy, the one party is unhappy, it becomes like a cancer. That unhappiness eats at them and eats at them and eats at them until eventually it consumes them. And then the whole relationship falls apart.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a tricky thing that you've got to make sure
Okay.
both
So
happy.
the best thing to do in
And then,
any event when you're buying a property and it's not with your wife and you're not married in a certain way is to go see. And is it necessarily the conveyancing attorney, or can any attorney do the stuff, do the agreement for you?
yeah, you can. As a conveyancer, I can put together an agreement for people. It is obviously going to cost a bit of time and money. So I tell people they must budget about 10,000 for it,
Okay.
because you look at probably 2 hours of drafting and time to consult and that kind of thing, and backwards and forwards with amendments on it. And then the second, you also got to look at it and say, right, well, if we break up, what happens? Can the one party stay in, and then do they pay rent to the other party for 50%? Do we sell the house? Is there a right of first refusal? Is there an option to buy someone out because they're not the same? The right of first refusal is if you want to sell, then I get to buy. An
Yeah,
option
yeah.
is
I get first option.
to sell because I want to buy. Or, do the parties have to work out how much each of them has to give? You know what I mean? Or do they just agree to sell it on the open market and take their money?
Yeah.
Now, one of the problems, as you said, modern life, people don't get married. And if you're not married and you want to buy half the house from your partner, you have to pay transfer duty, half the transfer duty based on the full value of the property. So if your
Wow.
property is worth, yeah. So if your property is worth 3 million, and your transfer duty is, call it 200,000 for sake of a number, you would have to pay 100,000 rand transfer duty to buy them out. So
Okay.
how are you going to work out the costs of buying someone out? Does the person pay their own costs, or do you share the costs? Um, you know, if you're married, in your divorce agreement, you can say who gets the house, and then there's no transfer duty. So things like that are
So
very
do the
often
biblical
covered.
thing, my peeps, Masakinis, and get married. Get married, and you
Oh, yeah.
can even get married without accrual. We'll do maybe next week. We can chat a little bit about the various types of marriage.
Yeah.
Um,
It's the
but I
same,
think for today,
also when one party passes away at the end of the marriage, if you're married, you've got the protection. You don't pay estate duty on whatever you give to your spouse.
yeah,
But if you're not married, you pay estate duty on everything other than the first 3.5 million, which is exempt. So
yeah,
it's also something to consider. So just for financial reasons, getting married makes sense.
does
But
make
to come
sense.
back to the property, so then, how does this work? Is there a dispute resolution mechanism? If the parties don't agree on what to do, how are they going to resolve fights? Other than sleeping in separate bedrooms or one party on the couch, right? It's like,
Yep.
because you've got to deal with it. Because you can't
Yes.
wake up the next morning and go, and the problem disappears, because it's going to be about money.
Yeah.
And until that money problem is resolved, it will stay there. So it's a good idea, when everyone is in that loving space, to put together an agreement which is fair to both parties,
Yeah.
based on what they put in, what the property is worth, etc.
And
Rather,
always the same with a marriage sort of agreement is you act as though you are getting divorced or the partnership is broken down when you enter into this agreement. You want to, and I know it's very difficult because we love each other and everything's so rosy,
but
but
it'll never
you've got to
happen
say,
fast.
listen, if this breaks down, then what do you need to do? You need to perhaps talk to
Yeah,
talk to a
yeah.
fellow like me that's
You know,
been that's had that rodeo a few times.
and Warren, I'm sad to say it, but in this kind of thing, a lot of people don't actually manage their administrative stuff very well.
Yeah,
Whether it be having a will in place, having their retirement. If they have children, you must have life insurance. If you've got a joint asset with someone like this, get life insurance to cover it.
right.
That kind of thing, a lot of people sit and go, yeah, I'll get to it. I'll do it. It'll never happen to me until it does.
Until I
I'm
come
sure
along and I do your financial needs
yeah,
analysis.
I'm sure you've also seen people where they've operated like that, and then the surviving spouse is now on a 20,000
Yeah,
rand a month salary, trying to raise 3 children and hold down a job.
yeah, no, I've so many sob
Next thing that
stories like
happens,
that.
they lose
It's
the
shocking.
house, lose their home.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
didn't have the life insurance. They didn't put the admin in place. You
yeah,
know, like driving without a seatbelt. No, I'll never have an accident
yeah.
until someone goes into the back of you, or you sneeze at the wrong time. So all of
Quite
these
right.
things, they might look like they're worth nothing because we'll get to it, we'll do it, it'll be fine. We don't have to worry. But those personal admin things, that's the stuff that people who make a lot of money get right, and people who struggle get wrong. It's very important to get those agreements in place. You get a job, you get an employment contract. You want to go to another job. You don't resign first and then look for a job. You get a new job, get a signed contract, and then you resign.
Then you resign. Yeah.
Right?
And
Admin.
what you should do is, if you haven't done it yet, is reach out to a financial advisor, like me, who will go through all of this and ask you the questions with regards to these implications and perhaps steer you in the right way. So, I mean, if any of our viewers out there need any assistance, just reach out and I will gladly help you with regards to that. The life cover, as you say, very important, Dave. Dave, I want to thank you for your time this morning. It's lovely that we get to
Always a
do these
pleasure, Mark.
things.
Always a pleasure.
Um, You take care. God bless. And then next week, let's put it under our caps. Maybe we talk about marriages and civil unions and those type of things.
I didn't hear any of that, Warren.
I said next week maybe we talk about marriages and civil unions. And people just staying together. A lot of people think that if you stay together for X amount of years, you're then literally in community, which we both know is not the truth. But let's leave that for next week.
Yeah, we can discuss that next week. And anyone who wants to read up on it, I have a website, www.anccontract.co.za, where we talk about the different types of marriages and civil unions and that kind of thing. But
Excellent.
More about that next week.
Excellent. Dave, what I'll do is if anyone has any questions on it, put it in the comments now on this, and we'll pick it up next week. And if you look into the video, I always put Dave's website down in the descriptions and that. So other than that, guys, God bless you. Look after yourselves. Have a great week. And always remember, use this brain that God gave you. Take care, my friend. Bye-bye.